as you mentioned here, you mentioned that you've built, lost, rebuilt, and now you help founders scale and exit on their own terms. How have those experiences really shaped how you think about creativity? So, not just as an output, but why is that important for someone that's a leader to have? And how has that helped shape what has defined real creative leadership today?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think leadership holds a lot of responsibility naturally, and you're thrown into times where you have to make the hard decisions. You have to get creative with ways to get through certain circumstances. So for us, coming into the financial crisis, all of our interests were related to overseas property, overseas property development, brokerage, at a time when money was contracting, you couldn't get a mortgage, people were literally withdrawing, like throwing in the towel on investments that they'd made. And so the market was going the complete opposite direction than we were. And at those times, you have to kind of make a call. Do we double down and kind of continue trying to climb this wall of barriers, or do you find new ways of working? And so in that example, we actually pivoted and went to Russia. So we were originally focused on the UK market, but we saw that actually in Russia there was still a strong interest from Russian investors to purchase in Bulgaria. And from that, it led to some traction. We did events. We set up a network of sub-brokers throughout Russia. And so we actually had a lot of wins through that kind of pivot and getting creative, I suppose. But that happens in leadership of all shapes and sizes. And I think if you haven't got a creative mind and you're not able to really think beyond the immediate and think strategically, then it is hard as a leader. So yeah, it's something we continue to look at. I think trends are getting shorter. It's hard to kind of have a 5-year view on things now. You have to constantly evaluate and look at, right, what's happening in the next 6 months, what's happening next year, and that also takes some creativity, I think.
Yeah, I think when we think about creativity too, I feel like adaptability and resilience is a common trait amongst a lot of entrepreneurs, especially ones that I've interviewed on the show. And
Hmm.
just being adaptable and being able to take a step back and not react right away, I think is also really important too. I feel
Yeah.
like you mentioned when we went through that, the global financial crisis, and that actually leads into my next question. But taking a step back and looking at the big picture and saying how can we be creative and unique and strategic with our decision making versus kind of just jumping on what everyone else is doing because you
Hmm.
might feel nervous about it. So that adaptability and resilience is so important. um, as you've touched upon with entrepreneurship and being in a leadership role, sometimes the most defining moments in your business can come from a crisis. So looking back at
Hmm.
the global financial crisis, um, what did it teach you really about that decision making and trusting human judgment, maybe when the data or the tools weren't giving super clear answers or the future looked very uncertain?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of a fine balance between resilience and stubbornness. I think we at the time, we were quite young. We'd had 5 or 6 years where we thought like this is easy, nothing's going to stop us, and I think that carried us through 2 to 3 years of struggle. Where on reflection, the right thing to do was actually to step back and think maybe that was it. Maybe our time in the market is done. Maybe we shouldn't keep throwing good money after bad.
Right.
And I think that's a lesson that you learn over time through going through those instances where you just don't listen to people when you're young as well. And I think we had a lot of people saying, "Look, the market's really falling apart. Are you sure you want to keep doing this?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're moving to Russia. We're fine." But but yeah, so you've got to question your own stubbornness. I think it helps to have some kind of advisory board or people that you can lean on.
Hmm.
People that you trust to pick up the phone to and will give you a rational view. It
Right.
might not always be the view that you want, but as I've as I've got older, I've now got a number of people that I'll lean on with some of the tougher decisions. Because you do need support. Like if it's a decision that's going to impact a lot of people, it's hard to sometimes make those calls on your own. So
Yeah.
so that helps. And yeah, just not being always so bullish in everything you're doing. I say would